The Big Cat is officially back in Seattle. We'll be diving into Leonard Williams' new contract and all the craziness from a busy first day of free agency here on our Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined, as always, here on the first day of free agency, at least the legal tampering period, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to all the 12s out there, whether you're listening across the state in Spokane, Washington, or on the other side of the country in Annapolis, Maryland. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. For most of this Monday, it looked like it was going to be a typical first day of free agency with the Seahawks with very little movement. Some wondering if John Schneider was still in hibernation. But a few hours here before the start of our show, some major signings for the Seahawks, bringing back a few of their own players. We're going to be diving into everything that happened today, including the players that also departed for greener pastures elsewhere. And our top remaining free agents is a jam-packed episode coming your way courtesy of FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Now for your lead story here on our Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. It looked like John Schneider was going to have another one of his really quiet first days of free agency. The Seahawks had only allowed a few players to walk away. There were no murmurs out there about potential signings, whether in-house guys or players from other organizations. And then just a few hours ago, we finally got a couple of exciting developments for the Seahawks. One that was hoped for and expected, one that maybe was a little bit more surprising. Let's get to the one that was expected. Rob, Leonard Williams coming back to the Seahawks on a 3-year contract worth $64.5 million, $21.5 million per year. Now, that might seem steep, but if you saw what Christian Wilkins got paid today by the Las Vegas Raiders, a player that isn't that much younger than Leonard Williams, to be honest, it looks like a deal that is going to work out well for the Seahawks, both short-term and long-term.
Yeah, I certainly expect that to be the case, Corbin. I mean, this is a deal that is very similar to the contract that Leonard Williams had previously signed with the New York Giants after being the, number 6 overall selection by the New York Jets a few years back. I mean, that's the price of doing business when you have a dominant defensive tackle. That's the reason why the Seahawks made the trade for him in the first place. I love the fact that you referenced the Christian Wilkins signing by the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, it's kind of typical Raiders. I mean, roll the dice in Las Vegas. I mean, Christian Wilkins is a really good football player. There's a reason why he was a first-round selection by the Clemson, out of Clemson all those years ago by the Miami Dolphins, and yet still he has not enjoyed the consistency that Leonard Williams has. And of course, Las Vegas Raiders know Christian Wilkins well. Obviously, they've done their own due diligence, but they probably don't know him as well as the Seahawks know Leonard Williams after bringing him in via trade a year ago. They saw exactly who he is on and off the field. And they saw a player that basically came in and did exactly what the Seahawks expected that he would do. He would be a difference maker in both the pass and run defense. So I applaud Seattle for bringing Leonard Williams back. I think that this is certainly if those of you who are kind of counting dollars, then sure, this is a spooky contract because it's worth an awful lot of money. But when you just look at the consistency that Leonard Williams has provided, again, not only in terms of what the statistics, but in terms of his leadership, in terms of his durability, in terms of his height and weight and his ability to tip passes at the line of scrimmage, as well as be able to kind of hunker down and play good quality run defense as well. He's one of the very few defensive linemen, either in free agency or in this upcoming draft class, Corbin, that actually kind of fits in. It has the ability to play multiple positions along the defensive line. Again, I think this is a really smart signing by the Seahawks and one that justifies the trade that they made to bring him into Seattle in the first place.
Yeah, I think, the discussion has been all about what the Seahawks gave up for Leonard Williams. And obviously that is a big piece of this puzzle. John Schneider has talked about it publicly several times in the past few weeks, including at the Combine, that the second-round pick and the fifth-round pick that they gave up in exchange for Leonard Williams, they did not want this to be a half-year rental and then watch him go somewhere else. But there's more to it than that. This is not simply a case of, we gave up all of this, so we have to re-sign Leonard Williams. He's a damn good football player, and while the team scuffled after he came over from the Giants, it was not his fault. In fact, imagine how bad that defense would have been without him in the middle. 4 sacks, 11 quarterback hits, 32 pressures, Rob, according to PFF, in 10 games, and he also had 9 tackles for loss. So he was getting it done as a pass rusher and a run defender. And you mentioned the versatility. Mike McDonald in Baltimore, he had a lot of interchangeable pieces on the defensive line, guys that he could move to play end, slide into nose, play 3-tech. And this is a player that can do all of those things in Leonard Williams. He can line up as a 0-tech. He can play big end across from the tackle. He is at his best as a 3-tech, 4-eye defensive tackle. But, he can play everywhere. So this was one of those where it was a perfect fit for what Mike McDonald wants to do. Then you add in the compensation. It made a lot of sense why they brought him back. On the flip side, that was a deal that many were expecting was going to happen. We talked about it a lot in the show. We just didn't think Leonard Williams was going to get away. Noah Fant, on the other hand, we thought Colby Parkinson was probably going to be the tight end that would come back in free agency, and instead it's Noah Fant. We'll talk about what happened with Colby Parkinson later in the show, but Fant getting a 2-year deal worth $21 million, $10.5 million per year. That makes him the 12th highest paid tight end in the league. You look at his production last year, Rob, 32 receptions, 414 yards. He didn't have any touchdowns, but he did average 12.9 yards per reception. And he also finished 8th among tight ends in yards after the catch per reception. So when he has had his opportunities, he has been very effective. He just hasn't gotten a lot of chances. What this tells me is that the Seahawks and this new coaching staff believe more out of Noah, would invest this kind of money in it, but he's only 26. We know the athlete that he is. He's caught 77% of the passes thrown his way. He just needs more opportunities. And, by the way, Ryan Grubb showed last year that he's more than capable of getting tight ends involved in the passing game. So I think Grubb had a lot of sway on this decision for the Seahawks to bring back Noah Fant rather than Colby Parkinson, who they could have brought back at this price point.
Well, they could have. I think that Noah Fant is the more accomplished player in both regards. Colby Parkinson showed a great deal of improvement as a blocker. We never saw him take that next step as a receiver, which is kind of ironic considering that's the initial position that he played with Stanford. But we didn't see the breakaway ability. We didn't see him make the consistently difficult catches that Noah Fant made. I thought that Noah Fant kind of continued to move up throughout his time in Seattle. And again, the statistics are not what you would hope for a tight end that's going to be making $10+ million. But you just look at all of the tight ends who signed or at least agreed to deals on this first day of the NFL so-called wavering period of free agency. None of them have the youth and athletic ability that Noah Fant does. And I'm literally on the road here in Corvallis, Oregon, having gone to, some pro day workouts and seen some pretty talented players so far this upcoming draft. And Corbin, this is not an elite tight end class. So I think this is an indication the Seahawks are basically banking on, or at least planning for the very strong likelihood that there is not going to be a tight end who is going to be available to them at number 16 overall or in a trade down scenario that would be able to make the immediate impact that a veteran like Noah Fant should. So again, this is the price of doing business. If you're going to pay quality veteran players, then you're going to have to pay for them. And Noah Fant absolutely is worthy of this production. Now, what this to me suggests, as you just said, is that the Seahawks are going to be funneling the ball to number 87 a heck of a lot more than they did this past season when they basically had 3 1A, 1B, 1C starters at the tight end position. I think that what this clearly indicates is that Noah Fant's going to be the guy. The Seahawks may wind up drafting a tight end. Hell, they may end up drafting 2 tight ends because this class does have some talent, but doesn't have high-end talent. Doesn't have guys who are ready to come into the NFL and be productive immediately. That's exactly what Noah Fant should do. He already developed a rapport with Geno Smith a year ago. So, again, to me, this is a deal that absolutely makes some sense for the Seahawks.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense when you consider that the Seahawks lost Will Dissly and Colby Parkinson. As you mentioned, it really was 3 starters that were rotating. It was musical chairs at that position. Now he is the only one that remains, which by default, that should mean there's a lot more opportunities for him in the passing game. We're going to get to what happened with Dissly and Parkinson, as well as Jordyn Brooks, some big losses for the Seahawks in free agency today. We're going to get to the negative side of the first day of free agency when we return here on our Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. You're listening to the Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined on the road by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to all the 12s out there. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. The first day of free agency almost done. We know that there's going to be some deals that break tonight. We're hoping during this live show that there's not any new signings for the Seahawks or players leaving the Seahawks for that matter. But at this point, as we just talked about, Rob, the Seahawks did retain 2 of their free agents. They got their top priority locked up. Leonard Big Cat Williams on a 3-year deal, $21.5 million per year. They also brought back Noah Fant on a 2-year contract worth $10.5 million per year. And it's a big deal that they were able to retain Noah Fant because they lost both of their other former starting tight ends, the ones that were on the roster the last couple of years together with Noah Fant. Colby Parkinson departing for an NFC West rival, joining the Los Angeles Rams. And Will Dissly is also heading to Southern California in what I think is a perfect fit for him, landing with Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers. So both these moves make a lot of sense for those 2 players. Dissly in particular, the Seahawks just cut him. They didn't want him at that price point. He gets a pretty solid contract from the Chargers. But I'm mostly surprised by the fact that Colby Parkinson got a 3-year deal worth north of $20 million by the Rams, and now he gets to play the Seahawks twice a year.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that Parkinson got a contract of that stature. We talked about this before, Corbin. I mean, even Spotrac was, I shouldn't say even Spotrac, but one of the websites out there that kind of prides itself in anticipating these things actually was projecting an even higher per year contract for Colby Parkinson. Again, we're talking about youth. We're talking about straight line speed, talking about upside. And I am intrigued by the idea of Colby Parkinson going to the LA Rams. To me, he projects as a very similar player as a Tyler Higbee, who had a great deal of success with the LA Rams previously. But at the same time, while I saw certainly improvement from Colby Parkinson in terms of the running game, still a very up and down, peak and valley kind of a player. I think that, if you had your druthers, you would rather have Noah Fant rather than Kobe Parkinson. Hey, I wish him well. Congratulations on a big time contract for him. Will Dissly, I 100% echo your sentiments. I mean, can you imagine a better head coach than Jim Harbaugh and what he has always prioritized? I mean, I can just imagine from a fantasy football perspective. Let's just put it out there right now. Will Dissly, 40 catches or so, 500 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, that's exactly what I expect that he's going to get for the Los Angeles Chargers, but also be able to provide a little bit of punch in the running game. So again, congratulations to Will Dissly. It was a significant drop down in salary than what he had received from the Seahawks in the past. To me, Corbin, the big one is Jordyn Brooks, just because we know the inside linebacker is a position of concern for the Seahawks. To see Jordyn Brooks walk out that door when you don't have Bobby Wagner, at least not right now. You don't have Devin Bush, at least right now. Both of them, as of our recording, are still have not agreed to terms with anybody else. But again, linebacker is a position of concern because I don't see a great deal of depth in this draft class. Obviously, with Mike Macdonald coming in, that is going to be a position of concern for the Seahawks. And again, Jordyn Brooks is a former first-round pick who showed incredible resiliency and durability in coming back from the ACL tear. And that, to me, is one of the real factors that we have to mention here. How confident were the Seahawks in Jordyn Brooks being able to duplicate, what he did a year ago? I mean, the track record of guys who come back early from significant injuries like this is a pretty frightening one. And considering the way that the Seahawks just got burned with Jamal Adams, or at least some would argue that the Seahawks got burned with Jamal Adams, I do think that was maybe one of the reasons why Seattle chose to let a good young player in Jordyn Brooks, who did everything on and off the field that the Seahawks could have hoped. I think that the price point just got too high. And so again, for all of these players, I wish them well. I think that the Seahawks were wise in not pushing the salary cap boundary with these players and instead reinvesting with the players they did. Again, that being Leonard Williams and Noah Fant.
Yeah, I think the 2 tight ends, obviously with Will Dissly, the Seahawks cut him. So they gave him the opportunity to sign with another team. Parkinson, I didn't expect. You expected it. I did not think $20+ million for 3 years with the production, but the Rams are paying for what they believe he can be. And you and I both believe in the talent that Kobe Parkinson has. But those 2 moves were not as surprising as Seattle letting Jordyn Brooks go for just one reason. If the Miami Dolphins would have given him a 3-year contract worth $45 million or something like that, then I would have said, okay, I can see why the Seahawks didn't make this move. The price tag's just too expensive for a player who's been good, but hasn't taken that next step to being great or elite in the league. And he's had a few injuries. But a 3-year contract for $30 million, $10 million per year, that is a reasonable price tag. You and I were projecting $11 million or so for him. So I thought the Seahawks, if you would have told me this yesterday, that he's signing a $30 million deal for 3 years, I'm saying, all right, number 56 is back in the Seahawks uniform. But they clearly did not match that deal at all. And the Miami Dolphins, now again, the Dolphins are cap strapped. So I don't think they could have competed with a little better offer from the Seahawks on that. There's no way. So this tells me, like you said, either it's an injury related thing or Mike Macdonald's got his eyes on some other players. I know there's a certain free agent we're going to be talking about in a few minutes that, as of this live show, has yet to agree to terms with another team out there. Could potentially be trying to reunite with that player. There are a couple other free agents that could make some sense. But clearly, at that price point, the Seahawks just decided, I'm out. Whether it was the injuries, whether it was other players they're looking at, maybe there's some draft prospects that Mike Macdonald's intrigued by. But whatever the case was, Seattle would have had every opportunity here to match that. And they clearly didn't, Rob. So that speaks volumes about where they want to go at linebacker. This could be a move. I posted this on social media today. This could be a move that, looking back, that we could have some reservations about with the Seahawks if he ends up hitting it big in Miami and plays to his full potential. At the same time, if they bring in another certain player that has played for Mike Macdonald and already been an all-pro, that would probably silence some of the talk with them choosing to bypass on that $30 million deal.
Yeah, no question. And the player that we're kind of hinting at, of course, is Patrick Queen, who could be royalty, in Seattle's version of the same 3-4 defense at the Baltimore Ravens. Right. As you mentioned, he already has been an all-pro, and he just plays a little bit more physicality, a little bit more consistency than I think that the Seahawks were comfortable with Jordyn Brooks. Look, I mean, Jordyn Brooks is a tough player. And again, his bounce back from the injury, I think, is notable. But I think at the same time, when you look at what the Miami Dolphins are looking to do, I mean, when they have the explosive offense that they have, then most of the time they are they're ahead and looking to feast off of rival offenses trying to kind of pass their way back into contention of that football game. And Jordyn Brooks had his problems in pass coverage, but he's an athletic player. I think that one of the things that the Seahawks are looking to do is they're looking to get bigger and stouter. And, Jordyn Brooks has been a first-round pick and a very productive player. I mean, if you look at the statistics, he's been absolutely dominant in terms of the number of tackles that he has produced. But the Seahawks' run defense, frankly, hasn't been very good. Yep. So if Bobby Wagner and Jordyn Brooks have been your headliners and your run defense hasn't been very good, then I think that there is an argument why Seattle is looking for a change at the guard to linebacker position.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in the next few days. There are still some good linebackers out there. As you mentioned, Patrick Queen being the headliner. So Seattle may be looking different directions for veterans. We know the draft, it is a strong possibility they're drafting at least one linebacker, if not more than that, with the wasteland that they currently have at that position after letting Jordyn Brooks go and walk to join the Miami Dolphins on a new 3-year contract. Up next, we're going to break down some of those players that are the best available free agents after day one, and hopefully none of these guys sign with a team tonight so that this has a little bit of relevance moving into day two of free agency. We're going to look at the best available free agents on offense and defense that would be good fits for the Seahawks. We'll get to those here in a moment on our Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the NCAA tournament with March Madness officially underway. Whether you're betting on a big upset like Fairleigh Dickinson beating Purdue last year or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all, whether you think it's going to be a blue blood like Duke or North Carolina or a Cinderella such as Drake. All options are on the table at your fingertips. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on the college hoops until they cut down the nets. You're listening to the Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang, who's out there on the road doing some scouting, was at Oregon State's Pro Day, and I assume has been at a couple other Pro Days down there as well. He's making his rounds. It's free agency, and let's dive into the best available players on the board still after day one. There certainly were some players that we thought the Seahawks might have interest in that went off the board quickly today, including safety Geno Stone, who played for Mike Macdonald in Baltimore, signed a 2-year deal with the Bengals. A number of guys we had talked about, they are no longer available, but there's still plenty of good free agents out there. And Rob, we already hit on Patrick Queen last segment, at least the relationship that he has with Coach Mike Macdonald. He is clearly the favorite for fans. He's the one everybody's hoping the Seahawks are going after, and that's why they let Jordyn Brooks go. And I think he's maybe the best free agent available at any position as of right now.
Well, I think that he certainly is that in terms of name. I think that there is going to be some out there who are a little cautious because he had been a good player and then exploded this past season. And so I think that there is going to be some caution out there, but I think that Patrick Queen would make an awful lot of sense. Would love to see him in a Seattle uniform. Devin White, Tampa Bay Buccaneers star, another former LSU Tiger, I think also would make some sense if the Seahawks decided to go in that direction with a veteran veteran linebacker. I don't think that there's zero chance that the Bobby Wagner could be back, or Devin Bush for that matter. Where I really want to kind of shift the conversation to is at the safety position, Corbin. As I mentioned before, I was at the Oregon State workout. I saw a young man, Katana Oladapo, who is a terrific strong safety prospect. But I don't see a lot of safety prospects in this draft class that I would endorse as, is coming into the NFL and being, frontline starters. We've talked a little bit about the young man, Cooper DeJean from Iowa, as a possible first round selection. But again, I think that where the Seattle is going to likely focus their attention is going to be on the line of scrimmage. So kind of going back to some of the other veterans that are available here, to me, the conversation starts at the safety position. There is a former All-Pro, the Denver Broncos, and Justin Simmons, who is still available. Reportedly, Rayshawn Jenkins from the Jacksonville Jaguars was at least set to go to Seattle. I think that he would make some sense. And I watched a great deal of film on Jenkins, and one of the things I really liked about him is the versatility, very similar to what we saw with Julian Love, who, of course, this past season joined the Seahawks and wound up becoming a Pro Bowler himself. So to me, you just got to kind of trust what the Seahawks have done in the past. I mean, that is one of the things that when you have a defensive-minded head coach like Mike Macdonald, who has had the success in helping a rookie and Kyle Hamilton become a star for the Baltimore Ravens a year ago, and of course, Geno Stone, being one of the most productive interceptors in all of the NFL. And as you referenced, getting the free agent contract that he just got, I think you have to just kind of trust this whole process. It's not about how many players you sign on day one. It's who is actually going to help your club in the long term. And that's something that Mike Macdonald and his track record, and certainly John Schneider, his track record, suggests that Seahawks fans should kind of just hold on. Everything's going to be just fine.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned those safeties. And I'm just going to throw this name out there because you had it on the list. Quandre Diggs, with some of the safeties that have come off the board, I'm sorry, but Quandre Diggs is one of the better safeties that is still out there available. And because he's a little older, I don't expect that he's going to be getting a top dollar contract at this point. So that is still very much on the table. I'll rephrase this. There are plenty of good safeties out there, but there's not a lot of true free safeties now that are available. Your guys that can play those single high deep. Rayshawn Jenkins isn't even that style player. Can he do it occasionally? Yes, but that's not a guy you want on an island consistently. He's better playing in the slot. He can play up in the box. He's a good player, but he doesn't have the versatility in the sense where he's going to be that single high ball hawk that Quandre Diggs has been for a long time. So there aren't many of those guys available. If you're looking for a ball hawk, bring back the guy that you already had, and you can do it at a cheaper deal, because I just don't think there's going to be a ton of big money offers that are out there for some of those veteran free agent safeties. Now, for my list, I'm looking a little bit differently here than what you are, Rob. I'm in the trenches a little bit. The guards flew off the board today. Anybody that wanted Michael Onwenu from the Patriots or Robert Hunt, my goodness, that man is going to be rolling in dough now with his new contract with the Carolina Panthers. 4 years, $100 million. These guards are getting paid. I don't think you're going to get one of those promising young guys. They're pretty much all off the board already. But Kevin Zeitler, he's an older player, but he made his first Pro Bowl last year. He is still playing at a very high level. Guards can play at a high level into their mid or even late 30s. We've seen it plenty of times. I just think this is a guy that would be a really nice addition for this team, not only because he's going to help your run game and he's a really good pass protector, but think of the leadership. They haven't really had that alpha. I know you could say Jason Peters last year, but he didn't play many snaps. A guy that's still a really good guard that can be that alpha up front, help with young tackles. I think that he would make a lot of sense. And on defense, I've mentioned Jadeveon Clowney a bunch of times this offseason. He's obviously already played for the Seahawks. He's coming off a fantastic year in Mike Macdonald's defense. I don't expect at this stage of his career that he's going to be getting a big money contract, but you need somebody off the edge that can complement Boye Mafe and hopefully Derek Hall and Uchenna Nwosu, that is going to be physical to point of attack. He has been a great run defender his entire career. So both of those players are guys that I think would make a lot of sense. As for the linebacker and safety positions, I'm still bullish on the idea of taking a flyer on Kenneth Murray, who was in the same draft class as Jordyn Brooks and Patrick Queen. He was actually the first one picked of those three, and his production's been very up and down. Last year, he had over 100 tackles for the first time. He had 3 sacks, so he's got some pass rushing ability. His run defense has been hit and miss. When he's been on, he's been really good, but it's a lot like the entire Chargers defense. So I'm wondering, is Kenneth Murray a guy that if Mike Macdonald gets his hands on him, could end up being a one-year bargain and play his way into a long-term future with the team? That would be a guy to keep an eye on. And at the safety position, Jeremy Chinn is not going to be mistaken for Kyle Hamilton. But if you're looking for a guy that can play multiple roles, that can get up in the box and rock people, that has size, Jeremy Chinn is only 25. That is a guy that could very easily fill that role, and I don't think he's going to be overly expensive. And Julian Blackmon, he is one of the few guys that I think can be that true single high free safety. He's 25. He's coming off a really good season for the Colts. Both those guys are young players you could invest good money in, but not break the bank necessarily. Get them on multi-year deals that I think would be good fits for Mike Macdonald's defense. So safely put, there's still plenty of good players out there that I think the Seahawks can sign that aren't going to be getting those day one massive contracts that we saw today.
Yeah, again, 100% agree with you. I love the names that you just mentioned. We've talked about another safety very high that I've been very high on for several years now, Ashton Davis with the New York, or previously with the New York Jets. Jordan Whitehead being another one. There's some good football players out there. I'm going to switch back to the guard position. I think that just like how it's possible that Seattle will kind of reach back out to Quandre Diggs, I think it's possible that they reach back out to Damian Lewis, as you referenced. I mean, with the 100 million, I want to say like Austin Powers, kind of
$100 million.
Exactly that Robert Hunt just earned from the Carolina Panthers. I mean, look, Robert Hunt's a really good football player. $100 million for a guard just seems crazy, especially in a draft class like this one. And I don't mean to be critical of Carolina. I just think that the Seahawks are kind of holding firm right now. I mean, there was 4 guards that signed or at least agreed to deals reportedly right now in this free agent tampering kind of a period. But look, all indications are they're going to wind up signing those deals, and all of them averaged at least $10 million per season, all the way up to $20 million per season. Damian Lewis is a good football player. If the Seahawks can get him under that, then that would be ideal. If not, again, this, as I've talked about so many times before, Corbin, this is a terrific class of offensive linemen. I mentioned I was at Oregon State today. Taliesin Fuaga, I think, is going to probably play at the tackle position, but there was every single team in the NFL was represented today, and Fuaga is the only player that I expect to be a slam dunk top 100 selection. So they're there for him. Seahawks sitting at number 16 overall are in prime position to be able to get one of these top offensive linemen. So again, if Seattle does not invest in bringing Damian Lewis or another quality immediate starting caliber offensive lineman to shore up that left guard or perhaps even center position, then I do think that is a position that the Seahawks will be focusing a great deal on with their first selection this year, whether it be number 16 overall or in a possible trade down scenario.
Going into day 2, the 2 storylines from a Seahawks standpoint that I'm most fascinated by, what's going to happen with Patrick Queen, because I fully anticipate the Seahawks are involved in that sweepstakes. There's a bunch of teams trying to sign him. I fully expect the Seahawks are right in the middle of that. And Damian Lewis, the other storyline, just because of the guards that have gone off the board, this draft class, how good it is supposedly in the trenches. What is his value going to look like as a 4-year starter that has been solid but not great? Are teams going to be spending big bucks on him, or is he going to be available for less than $10 million per year? And then in that case, the Seahawks can justify giving him a 2 or 3 year contract at that price point. So those are the 2 big storylines. There's a bunch of other things going to be going on in the next few days, obviously, with all of the free agent activity out there. But those are 2 storylines that I'm going to be watching very closely. As always, you can follow me on X and Threads at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Coming up tomorrow, we'll dive into the latest free agency news, and we're going to have a Tuesday mailbag if John Schneider and company permits. If there's a bunch of extra news, we may not get to your questions until Wednesday, but it's going to be a fun episode as we dive into day 2 of the tampering period and we get closer to the real first day of free agency. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the rest of your Monday night. Go Hawks.